Big issue is transportation infrastructure, making sure we get our roads back up to speed so we can compete economically, and also maintaining our economic competitive edge. We are doing well. The governor told me the other day our unemployment rate's now down to almost full employment, down under 5%. That's great. And so, we keep growing in that direction. Mississippi is going to really compete with some of the other much bigger states like Florida and Texas. So we're very excited about that.
Failure to make this investment means there's going to be a loss in jobs. Making this investment means there's going to be a gain. When you look at what's happened in other states and you look at some of the numbers that you've seen in those areas where they're making that investment, you could see the return. There's no question that it's there, it's making a difference, and thank you for sharing that information with us. As you said, our next two speakers really are kind of folks who can talk about the impact of this on the ground, what it means to actually have to deal with these issues every day. And our next speaker is RODNEY GROGAN. As I said, he's president of MMC Materials. They have this company and several other companies that supply materials to the construction industry. And he has to move concrete trucks and other materials across our roads in Mississippi. And being located throughout the state, he understands just the impact it can have, not only on his business, but on those businesses he's trying to serve. He actually moved to Mississippi a few years ago after growing up in Kentucky and has really gotten to know the state well. He's involved in several activities. He's on the Madison County Business League. He's on the board of directors for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Would you please join me in welcoming RODNEY GROGAN?
Scott, thank you. Good morning. Scott asked me to come here this morning and tell you a little bit about our business and the importance of Mississippi's transportation system on our company. I'll give you a little history about our business. We were founded in 1927 here in Jackson, Mississippi. We're based out of Ridgeland, Mississippi with 5 area offices across the state. Our main business is the production and delivery of concrete. We operate 41 concrete plants on a regular basis and employ approximately 400 people across the state. Our trucking fleet consists of 220 mixer trucks and 15 bulk haul units that we operate on a daily basis. Most of you in here understand that concrete is a basic building product used in all residential, commercial, industrial, and infrastructure construction. What you may not realize is that it's a perishable product. It has a certain time frame where it has to be delivered to the job, finished in place in order to perform the way it was intended to perform. So the state's infrastructure system is very important in us meeting our customers' needs, not only in delivering our finished product, but also in the delivery of the raw materials that go into making our products such as cement, fly ash, sand, gravel, and limestone. To put things in perspective about how dependent we are on the state's infrastructure system, in 2015, our mixer trucks and 15 bulk haul units traveled over 5.5 million miles in that year, mostly in Mississippi. So to give you an idea of how much diesel fuel we're burning or buying in a year's period of time, we get about 5 miles to the gallon for those mixer trucks. So you can understand what we spend on diesel fuel and in turn what we pay in fuel taxes to maintain our highway system. Let me say right now though, what we're paying to maintain that system, I'm not complaining about. And in fact, I realize that what we've got to do in order to maintain a system where we can continue to deliver those products to our customers, it's going to be more expense on us. And I'm fine with that because I know if we don't have that system, that at the end of the day, we're going to be hurt economically and from a growth perspective. So I want to point out a few things. Paula mentioned earlier about the impact. You don't realize the impact until something happens to you of how dependent you are on the transportation system. And I'm going to talk about 4 or 5 things that have happened to us over the past 4 or 5 years that really brought this to bear when they happened. One of them was about 5 years ago. We were delivering concrete to a pipeline pumping station down in North Simpson County, in a rural part of the county up there. And 3 of our mixer trucks were headed to the job, took a wrong turn, ended up getting on a road that they couldn't turn around. They ended up having to cross a low-weight bridge. All 3 trucks made it across the bridge fine, turned around. First 2 came across, made it fine. The third one felt something when he went across that bridge and realized he had damaged that bridge. We ended up working with the county to replace that wood pile bridge with a precast concrete bridge, and needless to say, that was an expensive lesson on our part right there. And from that point on, we made it very clear, not only to our drivers, our area managers, our salespeople, and our dispatchers, that under no circumstances are we to put ourselves in a situation anywhere in the state where if we run across a posted bridge or low-weight bridge, we'll cross it. Otherwise, it would lead to termination. So we've gotten to the point of where everybody realizes that, and we've gotten to the point of where we've had to turn down concrete. Shortly after that situation there happened, there was a cell tower project being done down in the Utica area. Our customer called us and said, hey, we've got this project, I want you to come look at it. In driving down there looking at the project, what we found out that in order to get to that job, and the only way to get to where that cell tower was located, we were going to have to go across a road that had a low-weight bridge on it. And we told our customer, we cannot do that. We're not going to take that risk of potentially doing damage to it. A couple of weeks went by, and we ended up going back down there to check on the project, and come to find out somebody had delivered concrete to the job and in turn poured that. Don't know who it was, but it was a risk we weren't going to take. Another situation that has come up in the past 3 years, and most of you are familiar with this section of highway, is Highway 6 between Batesville and Clarksdale. We've got plants both in Clarksdale and Batesville, and a lot of times we have to move trucks between both locations in order to service certain projects. Our trucks weigh somewhere between 30 and 32,000 pounds, depending on how they're loaded with fuel and water. That's an empty truck. A full standard mixer will be about 60,000 pounds with an 8-yard load on it. Most state highways can handle or are rated for 80,000 pounds legally to haul. That stretch of highway, however, was in a situation where we could not even take an unloaded mixer truck across that highway because of the condition and the deterioration of those bridges that existed. Fortunately, that stretch of highway and those bridges are now in the process of being replaced. But we went through a period of time, and I know farmers up there went through this same situation of where you could not, you had to go way out of the way in order to deliver the products to market on that. And that drove up the cost of our product, and it drove up our delivery cost on that. Another situation that we've run in here recently is up on Highway 51, the bridge across Coldwater River. That bridge we were very dependent on going between Coldwater, our Coldwater plant, and the Hernando market. That bridge ended up failing last year, and they had to let an emergency repair job. It's currently under repair right now, but just to give you an example of what that means from a delay standpoint, now it takes us an additional 20 to 30 minutes to deliver concrete from Coldwater up to Hernando. Not to speak of the commuters going from that area up to Memphis to work every day, and the traffic jams that are caused on I-55 north in the morning and then I-55 south coming home in the afternoon. One last project that I want to tell you about that we're currently working on, and a similar impact, is we've got a bridge replacement job over in Rolling Fork. Ideally, that would have been better to serve that project out of our Yazoo City plant. But due to a low-weight bridge on Highway 16 between Rolling Fork and Yazoo City, we're having to service that project out of Vicksburg. That's added about 30 more minutes to our delivery time. In closing, I say all this, and I mention these situations that we've run into, not to criticize those that are responsible for maintaining our state, county, and local roads, but to point out to everyone here how much we rely on a good, well-maintained infrastructure system, not only for our business, but also for the economy and the growth of the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodney. Our final panelist this morning is Mike McCormick. He was elected president of the Mississippi Farm Bureau in December of 2014. He's a cattle farmer and timber farmer from Jefferson County, and he and his family operates one of the oldest farms in the state that has been in his family since the 1820s. He's long been active with Farm Bureau, serving on their board prior to being elected president. Please join me in welcoming Mike McCormick.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you for inviting me here today to talk about infrastructure and how it impacts our farmers in the state of Mississippi. I am a farmer. I do feel the impact of roads and bridges and closures and posting down in Jefferson County, and my membership's feeling it all across the state of Mississippi. Agriculture, as Scott said before, is Mississippi is a main driver of economics here in the state of Mississippi. We had a farm gate value of $7.6 billion worth of ag products for the state last year. If you talk about adding value and future processing of that, raises up to $16.5 billion. We have over 36,000 farms in the state of Mississippi, 11 million acres of farmland, almost 28 million acres of forestry land in the state of Mississippi. We don't have a plant or manufacturing facility at the end of a cul-de-sac or in the end of an industrial complex. We raise these products, we raise these commodities all over the state of Mississippi in all 82 counties. And they have to go across many miles of local county roads and bridges, across interstates to get to a port or a manufacturing facility that'll take it to future process it. Mississippi's ag industry leads the nation or is in the top 20 in many different commodities. Rice, cotton, corn, soybeans, milo, all rank high in our national production. Poultry is our #1 ag commodity here in the state of Mississippi and is followed by forestry. All of those products are tied closely to being able to get inputs in and getting their finished products out to market. I spend a significant amount of my time listening to concerns and needing help from farmers across our state dealing with this infrastructure issue. Rodney talked about Highway 6. I think that's what put infrastructure on the roadmap for Mississippi Farm Bureau. When the bridges were closed on Highway 6, we had some grain elevators over in the eastern part of the state that couldn't get their products, they couldn't get their grain delivered to Friars Point. They were actually having to go more than 100 miles out of the way to get that grain to the elevators. Eventually, after a lot of losses, a lot of them were able to get out of those contracts and were able to ship that grain to Memphis, Tennessee. The next year, the bridges still aren't fixed, but they were able to transfer the cost of that transportation back to the farmers and just in lower prices for their commodities. This year, we were able to get that grain moved across Highway 6, and we're very thankful for the progress that we made there. But all across the state of Mississippi, we're hearing these same stories. Yesterday, I was dealing with a group of farmers down in Claiborne County on a rural county road that's been closed and the bridge is being worked on. And it's time to get in the fields, and to get around it is another 25 miles, almost to Utica and back down to the farms that they need to get to. We were very fortunate enough to be able to work out a compromise so they could get there. Time is very critical for our farmers. It's just not enough time in the day to get everything that they have to do, and saving just a few minutes every day is very important to them. It's a safety issue. The longer those heavy trucks with logs, with pulpwood, with grain are moving across out of the way, a lot of times down roads that we probably don't need to be going down. It becomes a safety issue, it becomes an insurance issue, it becomes an additional expense for an industry where profit margins are razor thin at times. In my home county, in Jefferson County, I have a bridge out near my house that causes me to take a different route to haul our cattle, to haul our timber to market. My family that I grew up with that farmed right above RODNEY, Mississippi, on the banks of the Mississippi River, had 2 bridges out. close to their house, cost them to go around for almost a year and a half, 15 miles around a gravel road to get to their house. There was one wood-structured bridge there that if it would have been posted, the only way they could have got to their homes was with a helicopter. Infrastructure has become something dear to Mississippi Farm Bureau Federation. We are a very conservative organization. In my lifetime dealing with this organization, I never would have felt like that we would have developed a policy that says we're for a tax increase for anything. But after we were having such a tremendous amount of problems with this, our volunteer leadership, our grassroots came together and put policy in our policy book that I take to our legislature here in Mississippi and says, we are not telling you how to raise this money. We know that it's a difficult task to come up with that approach, but we are telling you that if we're going to remain viable, if we're going to remain Mississippi's #1 industry, that we have to improve our infrastructure. We have to be able to get across these roads and bridges down these county roads where our farms and our ranches are. I had the opportunity to go on a trade mission here recently. I went to Cuba, and I looked at a country that looked like they had made it to the 1950s and somebody just pulled a plug on it and time stood still. And the Minister of Agriculture came and seeked us out, and he has a very fond feeling of Mississippi. He looks at us as much like he looks at Cuba, with the same type of growing conditions, the same type of weather, and he was asking for our help. But I see a country that's going to be struggling for decades to come, trying to feed themselves because they don't have infrastructure. They stopped 70 years ago putting any money into their roads and bridges, and it's going to be almost an impossible task for them to move into the 21st century. I don't want to see Mississippi stop or stand still. We've got to figure out a way to maintain these roads and bridges if we're going to continue to thrive from an economic standpoint. So on behalf of the farmers in the state of Mississippi, I appreciate the opportunity to tell our stories today, and that's what we'll be doing down at the legislature is to continue to tell them how important our infrastructure is to the state of Mississippi. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Mike. I'd like to take just a few minutes to kind of follow up on a couple of things that were said. Paula, if I could start with you. You mentioned the fact that you talked about cost at two different levels. You talked about the cost of commerce, you talked about the cost of the individual, but aren't those really related? When the cost of commerce goes up, aren't there other things that cause the cost to go up to individuals as well?
I mean, absolutely. And I think that we really see that first and foremost in our grocery prices. Whenever the price of fuel is starting to spike up, what's the first thing you notice? You notice that the price of milk goes up. You notice that the price of all of your groceries go up. That's because that increase in transportation cost is getting passed on to consumers. So, I mean, there's only so many people who can pay the increase in cost, and it's all people that pay it, not businesses. So it's either going to be the consumers, it's going to be the workers, or it's going to be the stockholders. So an individual has to pay the increase in cost anytime transportation cost is going up, whether it's because the fuel price is going up or whether it's because our infrastructure just is making transportation more costly.
And I guess one of the things that strikes me is when you look at one, not making an investment, you're going to see the costs go up exponentially. Making an investment, the costs are going to go down. Really and truly, it's a much wider gap than just those two numbers, right? I mean, you got to look at the both sides of the picture when you look at the total cost to the consumer.
I mean, absolutely. And again, those are just your marginal changes. It's not looking at the total cost of transportation. So as I said, whenever under your expected funding, which is your current revenue stream, you're going to have a loss. So you're going to have increase in transportation costs, and you're not going to grow as fast as you're forecasted to grow because you're not going to be as competitive. But if you make the additional investment, not only do you cover those losses, but you actually gain on top of that. So it's really the addition of those losses plus your additional gains. That's the opportunity that you have here.
And this is a question that's really kind of both for Rodney and Mike. Y'all talked about the products that you move. you know, yours being time sensitive, that, you know, of course, the time of the day, you've got to get stuff out of the field. But you've got to use the entire system. That means you use the state system, the county system, in many cases the city system. Talk a little bit about why it's so important that we look at this holistically in order of addressing this issue, because every type of system we have in the state is impacted by this, correct?
Absolutely. Scott, I'll give you an example. A lot of our raw materials are sand and gravel, which are located in rural parts throughout the state. And in turn, you're not using interstate highways to deliver those products to our plants. You're using either state highways, or in a lot of cases, you're using county highways to deliver those products. To put that in perspective, I didn't say this earlier, but I mentioned the number of trucks that we had running. We also have over 90% of our raw materials are hauled by independent haulers. And to give you an idea of the cost associated with that we've got for transportation, in 2015 we spent over $10 million on our raw material delivery cost, and we spent over $20 million in delivering our finished product to our customers. So as I mentioned, we're involved in the home building industry, we're involved in the commercial construction, industrial construction, as well as infrastructure. So in all those cases, we're using every segment of the Mississippi transportation system.
Scott, there's an old saying that farming's the only occupation that buys at retail, sells at wholesale, and pays the freight both ways. We don't have the opportunity of passing on the cost to anybody else. The farmer's going to eat that cost. And again, I talked about how razor thin the profit margins are in the farm industry these days. It's pretty tough to overcome. Our industry is for the most part down a county road somewhere, but once you get that grain or the cattle or the timber loaded on a truck, it's got to go up to a state highway and across an interstate to get unloaded at a facility that would further process it or ship it somewhere else. So it's our industry is going to touch every segment of the roads and bridges in the state of Mississippi.
Paula, you mentioned jobs, and I think that's one of the things that we are always thinking about. How do we create jobs? How do we maintain the existing jobs? The numbers you had were pretty staggering. It correlates with what I think we saw when we did our study, that if you break it down on an annual basis, you're talking about 7,000 jobs a year that's impacted by it. A lot of almost 4,000 initially direct construction jobs from making this type of investment. And then when you see what has happened in terms of the unemployment rates going down, I made a note. It was 50% in those areas of Georgia, 40% in the areas of Arkansas. So a major decrease there. And we know it's not just because of the road construction and all that. It really goes well beyond that, doesn't it? It affects all sectors?
Yes, I mean, absolutely. And again, there are a lot of other trends that are going on, but we were really taking a look at those relative to some of those trends. So we're taking out some of the positive impacts of some of the other attributes. And these areas are locating in the business, the investment announcements that they have are outpacing the rest of the state, which is not making the investments. And so, you know, yes, you do first of all have that boom and kind of direct investment in terms of the construction, but once businesses start to expand and locate there, then they're hiring construction as well, and then there's the ongoing jobs. And so we really tend to focus not just on the construction of the transportation projects and those jobs, but it's really about the long-term economic growth, and that's where the majority of those numbers come from, is that long-term lasting economic growth that you can have from this type of investment. I think another thing that's important too is, I've done a study because there's always a lot of talk about, well, we can all agree we need more money, but deciding how to raise that money gets very difficult. We did a study for North Carolina because they have I-95, and it's basically the same interstate that it was the day that it was built 50 years ago. And so it's a very costly program to improve that. And so they asked us to come in and look at the economic implications of alternative ways of funding the necessary improvements. And what we found is that no matter how you pay for it, you were better off making the investment than not making it. Because we all realize whenever you raise taxes taxes, whenever you raise fees, there's going to be a negative economic implication to that. So you have to balance the trade-off, the impact of the taxes versus the impact of the investment being made. And what we have found time and time again in transportation projects is that you are always you are better off making that investment, especially when you're talking about such critical maintenance and repair and maintaining your existing system.
Well, we'll just close real quick, and I'll just say, with all of what we have looked at, with the studies we have done, the one thing that continues to stand out to us is that this is an investment that will pay great dividends. It will help grow Mississippi's economy, and that's the reason that, without a doubt, all of us at MEC, businesses across this state, understand the importance. But again, public safety is extremely important. The safety for ourselves, our children, our families, that's all part of the equation as well. A safe and dependable highway system is extremely important. So I want to thank our panelists this morning for joining us. I really appreciate y'all taking time out to be part of this. I want to thank you for being here, for your interest in this issue, and we will continue to move forward. Thank you so much.
Well, we worked hard in the House of Representatives this last session to bring forward a variety of proposals that would devote some money to go towards repairing our roads and bridges. I think everyone agrees that there is a need out there. We've got to find resources to begin the repair of those roads and bridges. The longer we wait, the more expensive it becomes. This last legislative session, we brought forward 4 ideas that we felt like were solid ideas to generate revenue for roads and bridges. Those proposals did not get adopted. We're coming back for a special session in about a month, and we're going to bring forward some additional ideas as well, and hopefully at some point we can come to an agreement about a way to fund the repair of our roads and bridges.
We completed a study that lasted almost 2 years looking at where our transportation system is. And fortunately, from an aspect of what the actual system is, we have a great system in the state of Mississippi. The issue is we need to make sure we're maintaining that system. The problem is we have a great 4-lane highway system. We have the ability to move across places. But as bridges and roads become in disrepair, then we start to lose that system. So we want to focus on the fact of keeping what we have at a level that allows us to continue to use it, so commerce continues to move, so our citizens are safe, so that we have the ability to continue to grow our economy in Mississippi by having a strong, viable transportation system.